My military career started when I was 18. I signed up. I was allowed to graduate from high school, but only because our town was next to a military base. I spent weekends on base, learning fighting and the fun of filling out forms. The fighting part was fun, but the filling out of forms was MBS. That's millspeak for major boring shit. Worse, it was filling out forms for fools, inductees too dim-witted to fill out a form properly. They weren't exactly cannon fodder, but having signed in blood, their lives were owned by the military for the next 2 to 10 years, depending upon their career path. Actually, whether they knew it or not, most of them were going to be here for the rest of their working life. We're talking about low IQ people, and they wind up having their brains rewired, and they become drivers of trucks, forklifts, trains, and planes. The brighter would fly drone weapons, blinking out a tenth of a second before impact. If they missed their timing, they would wind up driving a forklift. They'd definitely be here for life. There wasn't much of a call for bomb loaders in civilian life, and the military wasn't going to force-feed them information, not into those high-density brains. Nor would the cognitive implants operate away from approved locations. Try that, and the circuits fry. MSDS, well, that's millspeak. Military secrecy demands sacrifice. Going AWOL is not an option. Hit the boundary, and the RTB protocol is invoked. That's return to base. One of the forms had the applicant's signature allowing the installation of the protocol. It added 3 weeks' salary to the signing bonus. All applicants wanted that. One thing I've learned from helping fools fill out forms was to read the fine print. I'd signed up, but my test scores had indicated a command path. I thought I'd have to meet several learning levels along the way. I reviewed my commitments, and by some chance, I hadn't signed all the documents. The officer signing me up had shown me the path, but I hadn't put down my signature. Had I signed, I'd have gotten an extra 3 months bonus, and he would have gotten a matching bonus. His distraction cost him dearly, and I didn't get the bonus to prove it. Even then, I was smart enough to take screenshots of my bank account and store them off base. They might be able to edit my bank account, and I'm sure my personal file was easy to fix, but screenshots would throw doubt upon their claims. Not that I'd be pulled in front of a civilian judge and jury, but military judges are pretty canny about the fraud that went on, and they hated it when officers were sloppy. 10 meters due south of the southmost stone of my house, I'd buried an end-capped pipe with a thumb drive, random and retrievable. Anyway, after 4 months of being a 2-day-a-week soldier, I went to basic training. Not fun, but I'd already been trained a bit. A 5-mile run with a 60-pound rucksack is devastating the first time. I knew to use extra socks under the pack straps. It was annoying for me, but I came in ahead of everyone in my unit. I wasn't bigger, I wasn't stronger. I just knew what I was doing. That gave me status. That marked me as a leader. That painted a target on my back. I was the guy to beat. Had I known that, I would have dogged it and come in third. It's supposed to show, not tell. The examples follow. Thus, when I was 25 years old, I was sent against a minor insurgent. Had I known, I'd have laughed and said no. Had officer attitude come back at me, I would have said, hell no, sir. But I was young and dumb. Oh, I thought I was smart. I'd learned that a time war was going on, or at least some of the enemy were mucking about with time. They needed special handling, so I was given special training. 2 whole months of special training. Had I understood that I was going up against three, 2 months was like sending a proud toddler against a ninja, a master ninja, and I proudly toddled out, armed with the equivalent of feathers and a wooden spoon. Time seems to have been resetting itself, the teacher said. He was a sour-faced man. His stripes said colonel, but his attitude said drill sergeant. He was training a dozen smart soldiers in the basics of time war. In a room with a computer monitor instead of a blackboard, and where each of us used a laptop instead of paper, he was in control of the information. "You've each been given $1 million, he said. "It's in a linked account to your personal account, and before using it, think twice. You will be required to justify your expense and provide receipts. Cash to buy information? You'll have to share that information, and it better be worth what you paid. Discrepancies will come out of your pay. Clear?" "Yes, sir." This was more than any of us had been paid since we got here, in total. And all we had to do was provide receipts? We're not doing it this way because if you need the money, you don't have to go through the red tape. Each of you have been fiscally responsible. No gambling, owning your own homes, no drugs, no stupid. You're given this asset because you won't abuse it. And if you do, well, we do need drone pilots. No one commented. To be a drone pilot was the first step towards brain death. It was a life sentence in ignominy. "I will now lock your reset to the present. Should you be killed, you'll be back." He held the machine in one hand, like a thick calculator. He held it briefly beside a head, pushed a few buttons, and went on to the next. The whole class was done in under a minute. "You can't get back to before your first reset point. Don't ask me how it works. It was explained to me 10 times with diagrams and in layman's terms. A demonstration will give you all you need to know." Colonel pulled out his handgun and shot a student in the head. It was loud and it was messy. The body slumped forward and all of our eyes went wide. The man was insane. And then it happened. The student was standing a few feet from where he fell, and he was whole, as in his head didn't have a hole, and his brains were still operating. He was dead, and then he wasn't. The fallen mess cleared itself, vanishing at the same time the whole body appeared. "Welcome to Paradox," the teacher said calmly, handing his sidearm to a different student. "You've seen something that did and then did not happen. From his point of view, he reset to that moment when I waved this beside his head." He held up the calculator. "You okay?" he asked the student. "What do you remember?" "You pointed your pistol at me, and then the clock reset by 2 minutes. "That was your first loop," the teacher said. "That you know about. Actually, it happens all the time, but you follow the same predetermined path. What I've done is to give you some memory back to your younger self." "Who's next?" the colonel asked. There were no volunteers. "You've got to trust your safety equipment. If you're working on the blades outside of a windmill, you'd have a rope hooking you to a tie point. You'd be tested by letting go. Who will go next?" There's still no volunteers. "You're all going to do this. I'm testing you for the presence of balls. Who's next?" No one spoke. No one moved. "How many bullets does the gun have left?" the colonel asked. The soldier holding it pulled the clip and ejected the bullet from the chamber. He pointed the empty gun at the ceiling and pulled the trigger. It clicked but did not fire. "All rounds present, sir," the soldier said. He thumbed the bullet back into the clip and returned the clip to the gun. He then returned the gun to the colonel's waiting hand. "And no one is rushing to our classroom to see what that shot was about," the colonel pointed out. "You have 2 memories of the same event. If you tell anyone outside this room, they won't believe you. There was no shot fired, not even a misfire." Colonel looked at the man beside me. "You're next." Bang! And so, our whole class got to, one by one, be sent to the past. Or rather, we had our first journey into the future and back. "And that's why you have access to a pile of money," the colonel said. "You'll use it hundreds of times, but it keeps coming back. You need resource? There it is. The darn thing is theft-proof. It isn't a temptation, it's an option. It's like knowing the day before a company announces that they are going bankrupt because they aren't going bankrupt because they've found that diamonds the size of hen's eggs in the discard pile, and that they are sinking a side tunnel into a $100 trillion bonanza. Yesterday, the shares cost you a penny each. By the end of trading today, they're $10,000 each. Yesterday, your broker asked if you were sure you wanted to spend $1,000 on this turkey. 24 hours later, you're worth $1 billion. Look, when you get yanked back to the present, all those gains are reset. This way, you get to focus on your chores. The 50th time you spend the same 10 minutes making the same $1 billion, you start to realize it's a waste of effort. $1 billion is like 1,000 lifetimes effort, one student said. And you're saying it's pointless? Did you not just see every one of you die and pop back up like shrugging off a sneeze? Colonel said. The better question is, how do we win when we're fighting a time war? The first thing I do, another student said, is get rid of the enemy's ability to resurrect their soldiers on the battlefield. He pointed at the device in Colonel's hand. I'd bomb that factory off the map. And when it reappears, slag it again and again and again until it stopped popping back like a zombie. Fine, Colonel said. Been there, done that. 2 factories come back, and now it takes a month to figure out where they are. So, how many resurrectors have they produced? Then, when the spy finds the location, he kills himself, goes back in time, and with the new intel, you bomb the new locations, and bomb early, and bomb often. You're thinking, the colonel exclaimed, if the enemy destroyed our factory, and we knew they were going to, how would we fight back? Give them 1,000 dummy targets, said the student who'd been the first to get a lap back to the past. There can't be many who understand the tech and how it works, I said, thinking out loud. Colonel is smart, and he doesn't understand. So going back and, in addition to bombing the building, make sure the scientist gets slagged as well. Wouldn't the scientist protect himself first? Back up to a point before any soldiers could be reset unto? Another student asked. If we can't kill him, then we capture him, I said. What good would that do? Eventually he'd die, and from the perspective of the past, he'd hardly have been gone at all. I cast my voice low and ominous. You will live out your life in a pain amplifier. The class considered. And when, after decades of distress, he finally resets, what mind will come back? What memories? A mind that would want to know where it was stored and abused for all that time so it could destroy the incarceration facility so that he'd have an early release. So we make a coffin with electronics, something to keep him alive, something to recycle the waste back into food. Sensory deprivation can drive a mind mad. Bury it under new construction with a couple of wires for power input, but no tracking. I'm guessing that for $1 million you could keep him alive for years. Intravenous feeding, waste processed out, and who cares if his hair grows? In the words of one philosopher, commenting upon an enemy who fell into a crypt as it was being sealed, is he dead yet? Does it matter? And I bet this could be built for a lot less than $1 million. Make it with off-the-shelf components so that factory-making coffins can't be bombed, said another student. For instance, the main body could be a 1-meter-wide pipe 3 meters long, and the works all slide in. Caps welded on, and a power lead. Easy to bury, and easy to play 3-card Monte with to make bombing the right one hard to do. You are all scary soldiers, the colonel said, and I'm glad you are on my side. If I were the enemy, said a soldier who had not yet spoken, I'd nuke this base. I'd capture one zombie soldier and torture the reset time and location out of him, kill one of my own spies to courier the information to the past, and set the nuke to explode when the colonel walked in the door. Zombie troops never initiated. And therefore, none to escape into the future and be captured, the colonel said. A clear case of paradox on a grand scale. Presumably, you would have kept the soldier you tortured the information out of, and he would wink out from the torture chamber, and you would know you'd gotten the targeting right. Except, what would you then have been holding in the restraining straps? They would be empty, as the targeting coordinates that you sent to the past. That's where I'm at right now, and if you got comments on fighting a time war, I'm all ears.